What's my relationship to cars? I wanted to make this video because, my username is Coscorrodrift. Not sure if any of you have noticed. And basically the meaning of my username, well, more than the meaning, the origin of my username is kind of a nickname that my dad has for me. Coscorro, it's kind of nonsense talk, right? Kind of baby talk, something like that. Plugged with drift at the end. And drift, in case you don't know, it's basically this racing activity where you drift your car. Well, the car drifts, where you make the car oversteer in such a way that you lose kind of traction and you burn the tires and all this. And I know this discipline inside racing because of the movie Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. That was the movie that made me interested in this in the first place. That's why, in drifting, I guess. And I liked the movie a lot, and I liked drifting in general, and I liked the cars that were used in the movie. Probably it was a mix of all those things, and that's why I guess I liked the drift thing. So when I signed up to places online, I used this username of Coscorrodrift. I don't know, basically because of, not sure why, but it's what I used. Then, despite that, right, despite me having this username, this Coscorrodrift username, I have never done drift. Right? I have never gone drifting. I've basically never driven. Well, I have driven rear-wheel drive cars a couple of times, but obviously not to such an extent where I actually drift them, right? I've driven them on track. I've rented a couple of those. I've test driven one. And it's spirited driving, right? It was for fun, for pleasure, for all that. In the track, you go pretty fast, right? But never like pushing any limits or whatever, right? It was spirited, fun, but never breaking the limit and even like breaking any kind of limit. Well, the speed limit, obviously, yes, but never kind of breaking the traction limits of the car or never pushing really the grip limits of the car or anything like this, right? Or pushing my driving skills to the limit in any sense, in any meaningful sense. It's maybe more spirited, like being more involved in driving than regular driving, right? Than when you're driving through the city or when you're stuck in traffic or whatever. Obviously, more involved than that, where you're basically not being tempted by your phone constantly. But basically that I've never gone drifting, right? That's the sum up of the story. And I wanted to make this video to kind of go over my relationship with cars and why do I like them, I guess. Well, not why, just to explain how I like them. More than, when I say that I like cars, because that is something that I use as a descriptor for myself, right? And I've made it my identity, in a sense. And one of the examples that are relevant for my audience, I guess if there is one, is my username. It is literally your identity, right? The name that you use, and it has a car-related thing, right? So I wanted to go from the beginning, and the first memory that I have regarding cars is probably like playing with toy cars and all those things. And basically, I'm not going to go with which one exactly was the first memory. I remember being very little, right? I think probably the first memory that I have, I don't know, maybe it's not the first memory, but the first car-related memory that I have is me being inside my mom's car, which was a Renault 5, a Super 5, I think they're called not sure if they're called Super 5 in French. In English, I think they're called just Renault 5 or something. And, by the way, I'm not going to illustrate this. This is just me talking. I wanted to first make this video of me talking, and maybe in another time, I will actually illustrate with pictures that I find online or things like this. But for this first video, not first video, but for this video, I wanted to make it a conversation. Well, not a conversation, a monologue maybe. So yeah, I like cars, and that first memory inside of my mom's car in the passenger seat behind, I remember looking at I think I was in the rear right seat and my mom was driving front left. So I remember seeing the dash, and I just like the memory that I have in my head. It's not like the interior of the car; it's just the dash, and her putting on like the turn signal light and the turn signal lighting up. I have that memory. I have another memory of my mom driving then the next car that we had, which was a Renault Clio, and she drove that one to like 140 kilometers per hour, right? The speed limit is 120, but I remember her driving like that fast. Back when there were like the licenses, the driving license had no points, right? Now driving licenses have points, so you can lose them or whatever. Back then they didn't. So if they caught you going 140, you just had to pay a small fine, I guess, or something like that. But your license was not at risk. I mean, 140 still to this day is not a point. It's not penalizable by points. You just pay money. But yeah, I remember that. And I remember playing with toy cars. I remember being in the hallway, like playing with cars in the hallway of my old house, throwing them in the hallway. I remember in the previous house before that one, in the balcony playing with cars as well, and then also throwing them outside the house. Well, not sure if throwing them or if they fell down, those kind of things. Playing video games, I remember playing car video games, Crash Nitro Kart, Gran Turismo 4, but I remember that I was never good at them, right? Nor was I super knowledgeable about the cars within game contexts, right? I was more, I guess, nerdy in a different kind of sense, right? More in a just pure list of items things. I liked to memorize car brands, right? I liked to know every car brand. I liked to know car models and all those things. Kind of encyclopedic type knowledge. I have a book. Okay, I will show this. I remember reading this book. It's called Coches. Simple title. 20th century. That means like 20th century. Cars. And yes, you can see the book is pretty beat up, you could say. And I remember reading this book often, right? I never memorized it autistically or whatever, but I remember reading the things and being interested in, I don't know, in how it portrayed things, right? Here you can see it has a little technical datasheet on the left, and I found that interesting, right? I found it interesting how they would list the different kinds of suspension. Right now, when I read it, I'm kind of confused because I'm not sure if it's accurate, right? They have things like front suspension, like front shock suspension, but I'm not sure if that's. I'm not saying it's incorrect, right? But I'm saying that when they say independent suspension, for example, like independent suspension, shock suspension, double wishbone suspension, independent suspension, I'm never sure if, for example, this car that has independent suspension has also shock. Obviously it has to have shocks, right? I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, back then I didn't know all of these things. So I just remember reading the book, and I remember reading the book and noticing that it had mistakes, right? That there were. Yeah, for example, if you look at these pages, I remember that the Lancia part had a lot of mistakes. You can read the text, and it's the similar text. It's the same text in both pages because they used the text for the integrale. They used it on this one as well. And it has a lot of the book has a lot of mistakes like that. And I remember having read the book so many times that I noticed these mistakes, right? And that I kind of memorized where the mistakes were, more or less. But yeah, I also didn't like memorize every car or whatever, right? I was not like this. I remember looking at maybe the brands that I liked or something like that, right? Or just looking at the pictures and seeing which ones I like the most. That's basically that. I think I liked cars a lot because of this memorization and memorizing car brands. And I also liked playing with cars, as in the little toys, Hot Wheels. I did have a lot of cars like those, and I liked those. Right? I remember that what I wanted the most was to drive. Right? That was the thing that I wanted the most. Drive, and also I liked tuning cars, I guess. I liked customizing them, and I painted my Hot Wheels. I remember really wanting to make kind of custom Hot Wheels and taking some Hot Wheels apart, trying to make them cooler in that kind of some kind of sense, but failing miserably. I remember cutting up some cars. When my dad went to Switzerland and he got me some expensive, how are they called? HO scale, like 1:87 scale miniatures. I cut up the roof of a BMW, and I probably still have that BMW around to make it like a cabriolet. I don't know, because I wanted to customize shit. Right? I remember liking that a lot, kind of tuning cars. For example, I remember Need for Speed Underground 2, that video game, and I liked the aspect of tuning in that game. I liked basically making the car flashy and faster, right? Same with Gran Turismo. I was never like really skilled racing. I never was into that, I guess, or thought that I could. I never thought of it as a discipline, I guess, right? To me, basically, the way to get ahead was to have a better car, to tune the car as much as you could, to spend money on it, right? That was, I guess, my logic. And yeah, I don't know. That's, I guess, my involvement in, I guess, childhood. Okay, also radio control cars, RC cars. I liked RC cars as well. I have had a couple. I never really got into actually taking them apart a lot and kind of tuning the actual RC cars, but I did watch a lot of videos about it. That is probably how I got into YouTube and maybe into the internet and all this, kind of looking at all these things, right? I think during my childhood and all this, as I mentioned before, I liked the Fast and Furious movie, right? And I think the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift movie, that is why my username is Coscuro Drift. I'm not sure if I ever watched the first and the second Fast and Furious movies before going to the cinema, but I remember I watched the third one in the cinema. And to me, that was kind of an interesting experience, right? I remember also, related to that, let's go more concrete, right? I liked that movie a lot. I remember because of the hero car, right? The hero car in that movie, well, not in all of the movie, but in a big part of the movie, it's a Mitsubishi Evo that they make into drift mode or whatever, right? They tune it for drifting, which is a strange choice. I think that if you were someone who already liked cars and watched that movie and already was knowledgeable, right, you would be kind of surprised by the choice of making a Mitsubishi Evo into a drift car, because it was not a common thing. The other cars, like for example the Silvia that they use, I think it was an S13 or I think it was an S15 actually. The S15 that they used, or S14, I don't know. The Silvia that they used, Mona Lisa, the other car, the main antagonist's car, the 350Z, right? Those cars are very drift-like cars. The RX-7, with the visual sidekick, right? The visual sidekick is strange, but it is a very Tokyo Drift thing. I think that is, and it's a very iconic car. Those cars are, I guess, really truthful and respectful to the scene and show knowledge. But then there are like the strange twist cars. For example, the Evo turned into drift mode. I think that Evo is a strange choice. But I think it was well received, even if it's a strange choice. And then the Mustang with the RB engine, for example, that one is also like a strange choice, but that seems more deliberate, right? More deliberate with the choice of the character, right? It's like Japanese heart, American exterior, winning, all that, right? So that has a story element, an important story element. But I remember liking a lot that drift car, like the Mitsubishi Evo. I think it was I think it's an Evo 8, but with Evo 9 parts, with like the Evo 9 front grille and all those things. With the Evo 9 or aftermarket spoiler, but maybe like Evo 9 inspired, I don't know. And I liked that car a lot. And I think the reason why I liked the car a lot is because I liked rallying, right? I think my earliest memory of what I wanted to be when I grew up was a rally driver. That was something like my first wish was to be a rally driver, which was quickly turned down by my family by saying that I have bad vision or whatever, right? My mom used to say that because you have bad vision, you cannot be a rally driver or whatever. Probably the stupidest shit ever, right? But I don't know. Like just with glasses, right? Not that hard. But yeah, I don't know. They're probably right anyways because I'm not very well coordinated or whatever. But I liked that was my first wish or whatever. And I remember liking that. I'm not sure why I liked rolling in the first place. Maybe it was then I remember that we had the Colin McRae video game, Colin McRae 2.0 for the computer, and I liked that game. I never was good at it or whatever, but I liked it, I remember. And yeah, in general, I liked car movies, and when there was a movie about cars, I would be kind of excited about it. Oddly, I don't think the Lightning McQueen Cars movie, I don't think I watched that on release, or if I did, I don't remember it as some kind of a big event. I remember watching it in my grandparents' house, pirated maybe, and I liked it, right? But it was not kind of super. I don't think I got super into it. I have a couple of Lightning McQueen toys, but I don't think it was some kind of obsession of mine. I think that my Lightning McQueen avatar and all this is more of an after the fact thing. But yeah, I liked Cars things. I liked those Fast and Furious movies. I remember liking Gone in 60 Seconds and The Italian Job as well because of the cars, right? I'm not sure when I started watching Initial D, the anime. I think it was probably before. Yeah, it definitely has to be before high school. No, not before high school, sorry, but before college, for sure. Because I remember that when I went to Japan, I actually bought Initial D, an Initial D game for the PS2 in a second-hand shop. And I went in Japan in 2013, right? So I was 15, 16 maybe. In 2013 I was 15. So yeah, I think I was into drifting more consciously by then for sure. But yeah, right in those times, like before I had my license, I think I liked cars a lot. And then after I got my license, it's like I had opportunity, but I feel for that is, I guess, maybe, I think I've always felt like I'm never like taking good enough shots at the opportunities that I have or those kind of things. I remember doing a lot of things with Ece, a friend that I met there in college in the degree, but I think he was he was much more motivated than I was. I don't know, like I never had it never came out of me, you could say, right? He was always saying, "Oh, I know this event. We can go to this event. Blah blah blah. This thing is happening." But I was never someone to seek out the things, right? I eagerly accepted, right? Because they were things that excited me and all that. But I don't know, for some reason, I never was a person who found out those kind of things in the first place, right? He does live a lot closer to like the circuit where a lot of these things are happening, but I don't know, like I could have just looked the circuit up, for example, and I never did that. I don't know. I was also pretty far away from it, right? Versus him or versus other people. But I don't know. I guess some people wouldn't have given a shit about it. I don't know. And yeah, I think that when we start to get into adulthood or whatever, I noticed that like I now got the sense that I was not into cars in the same way many people are into cars. For example, I've talked about this when I talked about the car scene. I don't know. I'm not sure if I will. Maybe if you look up scenes in my channel, you can see it. This is a long video anyway, so if you're here, I don't know. You probably either don't mind me listening to me saying stuff, or like you don't expect a lot of architecture. This is more just me saying things. But yeah, that is I have talked in my channel about how I don't. It's not that I don't like the Spanish. In the video I say that I don't like it, right? And it's true. It's that I don't feel at home in the Spanish car community for some reason, right? There is not a single car community, by the way, but yeah, in general, with the car communities that were close to me, right? I liked tuning cars and all those, but the reality of the actual tuning car scene and all this is that it's always very, I guess, not sure if rudimentary is the word, but it's not people who strive to have more knowledge about it and those kind of things, right? It's more like a lot of experimentation and all this with what you have, basically. It's never kind of trying to get more, or I don't know. I'm struggling to find words, but it's basically people who are very practical in that sense, and who, I guess you could say, like lower class people who just do whatever they can with what they have. Those kind of things, right? It's not kind of in the pursuit of knowledge and in the pursuit of truth, I would say, right? It's in the pursuit of, let's see what we can do with what we have. And with a lot of not knowledge, right? With a lot of kind of street wisdom. There is a lot of street wisdom, but there is not this pursuit of actual truth, I guess. And to me, I never related to that. I never related to the car community in that sense, right? I was like, why are you doing the things, like all of these, like, I don't know. To me, it never made sense, right? It never made sense to me the way people talk, right? Because the way that these discussions go are very like, to me, for example, at least, they seemed very, like bar discussions, right? The discussions that you have at the pub. Very just saying shit instead of researching, comparing things, doing actual experiments instead of just, well, when I say actual experiments, I mean kind of more in a more scientific, engineering-based way, instead of just like, because my cousin told me this, right? This is what I meant before with experimental, right? It's that every knowledge is based on this kind of street wisdom instead of being based on, like, I don't know, doing things in that sense, right? And I never vibed with that. I never felt like it was something that was for me, right? I don't know, it never came out to me, and because of this, right, I felt like it was not my place, right? there are also stereotypes that come with it, right? It's like the tuning scene with the music and all that, right? Always with the big loudspeakers and all that. So it's like, I don't know, party people get mixed in these kind of drugs, scene related to drugs and all that, right? Some of the people with cool cars and all that, it's sometimes it's because they are doing strange stuff, right? And I didn't like the vibe of that, right? But I don't know, even though I have talked shit, I guess, about these communities or whatever, I still feel like there is wisdom in street wisdom, right? There are things that you learn by experimentation and by exposure, more by exposure more than experimentation. That you learn by exposure. I think that's what I meant with when I've said experimentation in a more demeaning way before. I meant exposure, right? There are things that you learn with exposure that you don't learn with just science or whatever. And yeah, I've always respected that, and I've always kind of envied that. Even if you don't know anything about cars, right? Or even if what you not that you don't know anything, even if you know very little, or you don't know the fundamentals, and you are based on a street wisdom or whatever, but you drive a better car than me, right? I still envy you in that sense, right? It's like, what the fuck do you want real knowledge about if you don't actually experience the thing, right? The cars are for driving. So in that sense, I do wish, well, not sure if wish or whatever, but I do envy that. And I have always felt like I never was driving cool cars, for example. And there are people driving cool cars who don't give a shit, right? Who don't bother to learn about them, or who learn about the things in the ways that they are exposed to, but don't try to dive deeper into it or try to find a deeper truth, but they are satisfied with the choices or whatever, right? Many of these things, many of these battles or whatever, the problem is that many of these arguments are about justifying your choices, right? So there is a lot of people who love kind of turbo diesel engines or whatever, basically because they have spent $30,000 in a turbo diesel car, right? It's like, don't tell me another one is better, right? You have to justify your choices. But yeah, I don't know. In that sense, I've always felt kind of inferior, or not. I've always felt sad about not being a part of that, right? Or for being scared about people who party, and I don't know, for not feeling like that is my bubble, because it has. Yeah, because I am apart, separated from those, I guess, right? Because I miss out on so many, I don't know, cool car experiences, you could say. And conversely, right, on the engineering side, on the in the more serious side, you could say, I have also, I've always felt like I never was into it, right? I've always felt like I was worse than everyone in that sense. I've always felt like I was never as interested as people who were interested in the science of things were. I don't know. Lately, my vibe is that, well, my, I guess, internal idea is that I like the art of it, right? I like it as an art. So I don't like the people who are kind of argumenting just in favor of what they do or whatever, or who do it, I guess, yeah, with this lack of respect, you could say. Well, not respect. I don't know. It's not that I have like a super deep sense of what respect is or whatever. But yeah, basically, these kind of people who do it out of exposure and out of status and out of all these things, versus I think my view is more like I like them as an art, as a storytelling device, as a this kind of thing, right? As the stories that there are. I like that aspect of cars a lot, I guess. So, for example, rally cars and all this, I like the story that rally cars tell, right? I like what they do as well, and I would like to replicate that. But even then, I like the story. That doesn't mean that I follow rallies, right? It's like I like the stories, but I don't follow them. I don't seek them. That is also a reason why I've never felt super connected, because I never followed the championship as a sport, right? I'm not a sports fanatic, right? I don't follow sports, but I like the stories that sometimes come out of sports, right? But I can't watch, for example, a rally race and feel like I understand what's happening, right? I can't tell the difference between a super good rally driver and a good rally driver. I don't know. Like, if I look at the inside cam footage, I can't tell. Like, if you put me the times, I can look at them and be like, oh, I get it now, right? I did a telemetry course, right? So maybe in a track setting, I can tell a little bit more about it, right? If you, yeah. I don't know. I always felt like I've had access to so much information, but I was never like I never gravitated to it as much as other people did compared to me. So yeah, in that sense, I felt inferior to those people and to the people who didn't. And I also judge, I guess, the people who also have this same access or whatever. Or I guess, and there are like some people who don't know that the access of these things exists because of the way they access information, right? If your way of accessing information is by your cousin telling you something, right? It's like you don't even bother to think that there are better ways, right? And I have contempt against those people, I guess, and I have feelings of inferiority to respect the people who actually do pursue this kind of knowledge. Maybe I'm being harsh to myself, and maybe I'm being harsh to others as well. I don't know. As I said, I feel some contempt to those people, but I also know that I lack and that I am inferior to them in another way. So I don't have pure contempt for, I guess, lower class people or whatever the fuck, or people who don't bother learning or whatever. I don't know. Now I'm going to read a little bit about things that, things that I have done that are car related, right? I've talked a lot about these activities, right, that I did with my friend, and I like them, but I want to talk about things that I have done, I guess, for my sake, right? And visiting car museums, that's something that I've done on my own, out of my own volition, for example. But visiting car museums feels empty in a way, right? It feels like the cars are there just static, not being car-like, right? Not moving, and it feels worse, for example. But for example, I feel gravitated, but there is the story component, maybe, right? A museum tells a story, so maybe I feel gravitated. I kind of feel compelled to do it on my own because of this, or I don't know, or because there are no people involved when the cars are static. There are no people involved. When the cars are moving, there are people involved, right? Yeah, basically museum. I've rented cars, right? That I have done just for fun, just to drive myself. I've done that. But yeah, there is not a lot more of like that. I've gone to a couple of, not museum, but car events, let's say. And I, on my own, and it was interesting. Like, I like it. I like the vibe and all that. But yeah, I always feel like going alone to a car event is strange, right? I don't know. Because, yeah, because of the people component. And yeah, another thing that I do is watch a lot of car videos and all that. I'm not in my highest era of watching car videos, but it's still something I do. And and I have done it in the past a lot as well. So yeah, car videos are something that I guess I do. Even if it doesn't fill the void or whatever, it at least is something. And yeah, to end the video, I wanted to read this comment and, I don't know, give me forgiveness, I guess. End the video with a forgiveness note to myself. And it's basically this, right? This is a comment on a video of people in the Wangan highway in Tokyo. Yeah, one is racing, it's an RX-7 with kind of a kitted stuff, and then it's racing a Skyline. And yeah, basically there is this guy from the Option Video show, and yeah, the video is from Chiba-kun, a guy who frequently goes through Wangan and records videos. But he didn't own any cars, right? He went with the people and made the videos. He was very famous around there and captured some pretty amazing videos. The guy never owned a car, as far as I know, and always rode on a bike. This particular video was when he was invited to go on a speedrun with a GTR Skyline and Mazda RX-7. The two drivers were going to run on a new built Aqualine. Yeah, basically the Aqualine was this kind of highway. And what I found interesting about this comment, right, it's that this guy was someone who was beloved, who was invited to whatever, and he didn't even own a car, right? So that archetype to me is always interesting. It's the archetype of the car journalist, right? The car journalist is the person who drives the most amount of cars ever, but then sometimes they don't even drive a car, right? They don't even have a car themselves because why would they, right? Because they get press cars a lot, so they can do the things that they need driving with the press car. And I find that archetype interesting, and I relate to it in that way, right? Because as I have said, I'm not very connected to, I've never owned many cars. I feel, I guess, inferior in that sense. But there is this sense in which you can be, I guess, yeah, respected or invited to go places if you are kind of journalistic about it. And I feel like that is, I guess, something I aspire to maybe or relate to. I don't know. And I wanted to end the video there. So yeah, thank you for listening if you made it this far, 40 minutes in. And if not, okay, you're not seeing this anyway, so yeah, basically, thank you for being here if you made it. And I don't have any suggestions of videos that you should watch next. I may have linked some videos where I talked about these car scenes in the description, so maybe check those out. But yeah, I guess I don't have a lot more to say. Maybe I will remake this video in a more succinct and more structured way. But yeah, I wanted to get this out there first. Bye. Thank you.